Hello everybody. In this video, we'll be discussing the different encounters you can face on the Sea of Thieves. Previously, we discussed all of the current world events of Season 13, but in this episode, we'll be covering the active encounters, such as the Megalodon, the Kraken, and the roaming skeleton ships, and the passive encounters, such as the ghost forts, the coral structures, and the skeleton camps. Let's start with the active encounters. First on the list, we have the Megalodon. The Megalodon can show up in one of 5 forms. From most to least common, we have the Hungering One, the Crested Queen, the Shadow Maw, the Ancient Terror, and the Shrouded Ghost. For the first 4, they are seen by most players, but for the 5th one, the Shrouded Ghost, is by far the rarest Megalodon in the game. I cannot possibly stress this enough. You most likely have a better chance of winning the lottery than coming across one of these Shrouded Ghosts. Now, with the Hungering One, it is noticeable with a blue hide and green eyes, along with blue fins. The fins on all of the Megs glow with bioluminescence in the night. The Crested Queen is a magenta-colored Megalodon with pink eyes and fins. The Shadow Maw is a black Megalodon with red fins and eyes. The Ancient Terror is a dark yellow with neon yellow fins and eyes. And finally, the Shrouded Ghost is white with pink fins and eyes, which causes the Shrouded Ghost to be easily confused with the Crested Queen, and vice versa. But while all of the Megalodons have specific music that plays when encountered, the Shrouded Ghost has its very own music that plays whenever it appears. So keep an ear out. But let me go into more detail with the Megalodon behaviors. The Meg can show up alongside your ship at any point while you're sailing around, and as long as you're not near any islands, these beasts can show up at any moment. The first sign of a Meg attack is a deep rumbling from below, which is then followed by the Meg breaching the surface near your ship. This Meg will continue to follow your ship as you sail, and attempt to circle you, even while your ship is moving. And eventually, if you stay within the same area long enough, it will charge at your ship. Acting much like a regular shark in the Sea of Thieves, they will circle you until they eventually bite you. Once a bite is taken out of your ship, you will take 1 to 5 holes of damage. The amount of damage a Meg can deal will depend on multiple factors, 2 of them being your crew size and your ship type. The health of each Megalodon will also change depending on ship type. While the Megalodon is circling your ship, and once it enters the angle of your ship's cannons, you can fire upon this sea beast. Though attacking it can lead to a premature attack. The Meg can bite from practically any angle, but if the Meg decides to bite from the angle of your cannons, you can fire upon them mid-charge, and if you shoot them enough with cannons, then the Meg will disengage its charge, and swim under the ship to reset. Speaking of resetting, the Meg has an additional ability of sneaking under the ship to reappear elsewhere, just to disorient you. While cannonballs deal the most damage to Megalodons, you can attack them with all sorts of weapons, and since the cannons can only attack the Meg while it is in the broad of your ship, other weapons such as firearms and tridents can fire upon the Meg whenever it is in front or behind your ship. Once the Meg is beaten, and it despawns, it will drop an assortment of loot for you to harpoon, clearly the spoils of the many crews this beast has eaten over the years. Some more facts regarding the Megalodons. If a Meg bites your ship, it can deal massive knockback, along with dealing holes of damage. This knockback can send players off the side of your ship if you aren't careful. If you aren't anchored, it can send your boat drifting away from you if you're ever knocked off. So make sure to keep the anchor dropped when fighting Megs. Another thing, if you're too close to the point at which the Meg is biting, then you will lose half of your health while being flung off the ship. And if you ever died to this damage, you can receive the blue light from the Well of Fate, just as if you died from a normal shark. If a Meg is ever about to charge at your ship, you can use blunderbombs to have the same effect as cannonballs, meaning if you throw enough blunderbombs while they're charging, then you can disengage them. And one final fact, Megs are harpoonable. So, if you ever encounter a Meg, then you can harpoon them and let them take you away. This works for harpoon rowboats as well. Do with this information however you see fit. And with the topic of Megalodons complete, we have the skeleton ship encounter. Now this has a passive and an active variant. Just like the Megalodon, the skeleton ship can spawn on you while you're sailing around, but while sailing near an island may disengage a Megalodon encounter, the skeleton ship will continue to attack you until one of you sinks. And just like the Meg, there will be unique skeleton music that plays whenever a skeleton ship spawns. But for the Skelly ship, the music will start before they have even surfaced from the water. Now, I have already discussed how skeleton ships work in their entirety in the previous episode of sea-based world events, so if you want to learn more about them, please check out that video. But the only thing of note when regarding active skeleton ship encounters is that player sloops will only ever have skeleton sloops spawn on them, and player galleons will only have skeleton galleons. However, the player brigantines can either have scoops or scallions spawn on them. But now for the passive side of skelly ships. These passive skelly ships are called the roaming skeleton ships, and they act neutral, for they won't hunt you down if you're within the vicinity, and they can be seen from a distance, simply sailing along their own adventures. But if you ever get within spitting distance, or you fire at them, then they will turn hostile, and act exactly as an active skeleton ship. And now for the rarest active encounter, the Kraken. The Kraken is something that can show up at your ship at any point when sailing, though it is pretty uncommon. But its sign of encounter is ominous music starting to play while the sea around you starts to blacken. These ink-filled waters can burn and suffocate you quite quickly if you are ever to go below the surface. So I would not recommend any deep diving when you're facing this beast. Once the sea darkens, you will see an array of tentacles rise out of the water to surround your ship. Now these tentacles have multiple abilities. A passive tentacle can sink into the water and reappear near your ship to give a teeth-rattling smack, dealing multiple holes of damage while also knocking your ship out of angle. Another ability is to wrap a tentacle around your ship. This wrapped arm deals stress damage to the ship the entire time it is holding on. There may be no increased headshot damage on enemies and players within the Sea of Thieves, but that is not the case for the tentacles of the Kraken. For the head/mouth of each tentacle is its critical weak point. Once you fire upon a tentacle enough, it will scream and writhe in agony as it sinks into the depths in a panic. This is the only way to beat the Kraken. Simply take out however many tentacles it takes to cause the Kraken to retreat. Depending on the ship type, it will take more tentacles to beat the Kraken. One final ability that the Kraken has is the ability to suck players off of the ship. Since the heads of these tentacles are more like mouths, they can create a vacuum-like effect and pluck players off their ship with a vortex-like ability. This ability can be done by passive tentacles. So, to know if you're the one being targeted, you will see yourself in the center of a mass of dust being lifted off the floor. If you see this, then you must go below deck to avoid being plucked off the ship. But if the tentacle is plenty damaged by this point, you can injure the tentacle before it sucks you up, though it is a gamble. But once the Kraken is beaten, you will see treasure appear wherever you have injured a tentacle, meaning the bigger your ship, the more loot you will get. But that's all there is for the active encounters. Now let's get to the passive ones. Passive encounters, as I call them, are things such as the ghost forts, coral structures, and skeleton camps. While the world events only have one active at a time, every passive encounter is nearly always active, and they have multiple locations around the Sea of Thieves. Starting things off, we have the Ghost Fort. These Spanish fortresses were brought to the Sea of Thieves from the Sea of the Damned by Flameheart. These ghost forts harbor phantoms defending a small stockpile of treasures in their vault, though you must beat 7 waves to get the key to the treasure vault. Also, once you approach the ghost fort, there will be cannons that fire upon you, which deactivate once you've docked or sent a player. Even though these cannons may appear to be quite inaccurate compared to normal skeleton forts, they can still hit you, so dock with haste. These ghost forts are much like normal skeleton forts, but instead of skeletons, you face phantoms. Phantoms are much like skeletons, however they have the ability to teleport. They can use this to reposition themselves, or they can use it while charging up a sword lunge. They also have the ability to lunge at you with powerful force. And one final thing that separates phantoms from skellies is the fact that they can change their weapons, having 2 weapons to swap between while skellies are forced to only 1. Once you reach the final wave, you'll face the fortress captain, and once beaten, they will drop an ammo pouch and a treasury key, which is used to unlock the vault in the lowest level of the fort, which has an assortment of ghostly and non-ghostly treasures, all treasures belonging to the 3 main trading companies. But that isn't all there is to the ghost forts, for there's a bonus to any who can find a storeroom key. A unique feature of these ghost forts is the ability to search through chests and cabinets. While you may find additional gold pouches and other mini treasures hidden away, your main goal should be the storeroom key, which should give you 3 to 4 extra pieces of treasure. Definitely worth picking up since you're already there. One final note for ghost forts, there are 6 ghost forts total, 2 for each of the main 3 regions. So if you're only trying to do ghost forts, you can simply go around the map of the Sea of Thieves, completing each one in rotation. But now for the coral shrines and treasuries. These coral structures were established by the ancients and the merfolk as a middle ground for the two to communicate and share treasures. But after the Sirens were formed and the ancients disappeared, the Sirens took over these structures as part of their own sunken kingdom. Just as the ghost forts are natural structures that we can encounter whenever we wish to, these coral structures are also available whenever players wish to engage with them. There are 6 coral shrines, 2 for each of the main 3 regions, and there are 3 coral treasuries, 1 for each of the main regions. The coral shrines are the puzzle structures where you solve your way to the main treasure room, and the coral treasuries are the underwater versions of skeleton forts. Once you complete a coral shrine, it will take about 15 minutes to reset before you can receive any new rewards from it, though a coral treasury will take 45 minutes to reset after completion. Each of the shrines vary drastically, for not one of them feels similar to another, and while you're completing these puzzles or exploring their beautiful environments, you can find pieces of treasure hidden around the rooms and caverns, so make sure to keep an eye out for them. But once you reach the final room of the shrine, you will find the bulk of the treasures. You may notice that these treasures are all covered in pieces of coral and sea life. These are sunken variants to the treasures of the Sea of Thieves, just as the ghost fleets and forts have ghost treasure variants. After I discuss shipwrecks and the Devil's Roar, I will cover every type of treasure in the Sea of Thieves in an entirely separate episode. But when it comes to solving coral shrines, it can be pretty tricky, and I would recommend looking up guides if they ever get too tricky. But these puzzles are quite fun, and I would really recommend giving it your all. And once you do solve them, they'll be the same every time, so you can complete the puzzles with haste whenever you revisit them. Though the placements of all the hidden treasures will be randomized every time, so that gives some replayability. But once you can solve them fast enough, you'll find a decent profit for very little time put in. Also, since the coral shrines are all different, I won't have the time to explain how to complete each one of them in this video. However, if you wish for me to make an episode about that, please leave a comment down below. And if I get enough of them, I promise I'll make a video explaining each of the shrines along with their puzzles and their secrets. Before I move on to the treasuries, I must explain the bubble doors. The bubble doors is how you enter most of these shrines and treasuries, and they'll be the entrances to some of the rooms within. You must look for some glowing brain coral connected to these bubble doors, and you must hit them with your cutlass or a projectile to activate. Once activated, these doors become permeable. Once permeable, the doors will ripple with a pink shimmer, meaning you can pass through. Also, sometimes, when swimming down to these coral structures, you can get lost as to where the entrance is, but one good rule of thumb is to swim to the brightest area, as the brightest points will usually be around the entrances of these structures. And don't worry about breath, for you have a much longer time underwater when around these structures. Also, there are air straws around these structures and inside, so if you ever are starting to lose your breath, go for those. But let's move on to the coral treasuries. Like I said, the treasuries are the sunken versions of the skeleton forts, where you can face coral skeletons, ocean crawlers, and sirens. Coral skeletons are simply just normal skeletons with a little bit of extra health. Ocean crawlers are a whole other breed of beast, however. Ocean crawlers are zombified sailors who are captured by the Sirens. Sailors who never got the benefit of the Ferry of the Damned, trapped forever as servants to the Siren Queen. There are 3 types of ocean crawlers, each with their own special abilities, starting off with the blue ocean crawler, the electric eel. This crawler looks like a bipedal siren with an electric eel wrapped around them. They have 4 abilities: their melee attack, their projectile attack, their support ability, and their passive ability. Their melee being an eel whip attack, which deals a stun effect, where you can't move or attack for a second. Their projectile is where they charge up an electric bubble to fire at you from a distance. Their support ability is where they create an electric aura around their nearby ocean crawler allies. And their passive is present whenever they are using one of their active abilities, and it acts as an electric thorns effect. If you hit them whenever they are using their abilities, you will take damage and be stunned for a second. The electric aura formed around their allies carries the same effect. The next ocean crawler is the green crawler, the clam. The clam has 4 abilities: their breath attack, their charge, burrow, and their support ability. Their breath attack is only activated when you get too close. They will breathe this toxic gas plume in your face, dealing a poison damage to you for as long as you are close. Their charge attack acts very much like a bull, as they charge head first at you with great force. It's very hard to dodge their attack, so I would recommend looking for obstacles or outrunning them. Then there's their burrow ability, where they dig into the ground and resurface right under you with great force, dealing knockback and damage. Though if you keep moving, you can dodge this attack. And finally, we have their support ability. The support ability is much like the eels, where they grant their allies a supportive aura. Though instead of an electric aura, it is the same aura as the toxic gas from their breath attack, meaning if you get too close to their allies during this ability, you'll take continuous poison damage. If you ever want to interrupt these support abilities, you'll have to take them out at the source, the crawler who used the ability. And now onto the final ocean crawler, the red crawler, aka the crab. This 8-foot tall monster is the tank of the ocean crawlers, having the most health and damage, but the fewest of abilities. The crab's abilities only consist of their slam attack and their support ability. Just as it sounds, their slam ability is when a player gets too close, they will slam down on the ground, like a miniature skeleton lord slam attack. Their only other ability, being the support, is where they hunker down into a coral shield and generate coral shields around their other allies. This negates most of the damage you deal to any of these shielded allies, which is why it's important to target the one who is generating the shields to knock them out of this ability, disabling the shields altogether. When going about on your adventures on the islands, you can come across any one of these threats, whether it's skeletons, phantoms, or ocean crawlers. But with the phantoms and ocean crawlers, they have chances of granting you rewards for their defeat. The phantoms have a chance of dropping ghostly gold pouches, and the ocean crawlers have small chances of dropping siren gems, which can be sold to any of the trading companies, excluding the Athena's Fortune. But now let's get to the sirens. For some of the waves in a coral treasury, the entire arena will get submerged, which will lead you to fighting sirens. Sirens and sharks are the only underwater threats that you can face outside of the sea beasts. Sirens have multiple abilities as well. They have multiple melee combos and attacks, they have a bubble projectile that they can fire at you, and they can scatter, where they disappear and reappear elsewhere to disorient you. They also have a healing ability, which creates a massive damaging aura around them. I recommend firing at them from a distance to kill them before they can heal. These sirens come in two forms, the normal blue sirens and the green siren leaders. The siren leaders are able to use a trident to its full extent, firing at you from a distance with varying types of projectiles, also having slightly more health than the normal siren. Real quick, before I continue the discussion of the treasury, I'd like to explain tridents. Tridents are weapons that belong to the sirens, that act as an underwater firearm. This staff is able to charge up to 3 different types of bubble projectiles. The first one being the smallest bubble. This bubble is fast, low damage, and has a small hitbox. The second bubble is more of a medium size, dealing more damage, taking longer to charge, and is a bit slower. Then there's the third bubble. Incredibly slow, massive hitbox, and incredible damage, but takes a much longer time to charge. The bigger the bubble, the more of an area of effect it has as well. Also, the trident has limited ammo. The grayer it gets, the closer it gets to losing power altogether. And once it's fully run out, it disappears. But if you don't use it all the way, you can sell it to any of the main trading companies, plus the Reapers. But back to the treasuries. When you enter these treasuries, you'll see these tridents are laid about everywhere. I would highly recommend using these tridents, as they are the fastest way to beat all of the enemies. Every enemy, except for the crab crawler, takes only 2 small bubble shots from the trident, the crab taking 3 shots, or just 1 big bubble. Once you've reached the 13th and final wave, you'll face the Treasury Master, which acts much like the Skeleton Captains and Fortress Phantom Captains, but this Treasury Master can take the form of any ocean crawler or siren. Once all enemies are defeated, the treasure vault will open automatically. These treasuries have a great bulk of coral treasure, with a guaranteed chest of ancient tributes, the main treasure item from the Gold Hoarder vaults. These treasuries are also guaranteed a Horn of Fair Winds, a utility treasure item that has a variety of uses, from blowing wind into your sails when there is none available, to knocking your enemies off the ship. Treasuries are a guaranteed way to get these buttes. But once you have a piece of treasure in one of these coral structures, you want to bring it back to your ship, of course. But instead of swimming all the way back to the surface, there is a treasure mermaid statue that stores the treasure you wish to send to the surface. It can only store 20 pieces of treasure at a time though, so make sure to pick the most valuable items, if there is ever a surplus. And once you're done getting all of the treasure, or you simply wish to empty the statue, you can use the mermaid to teleport back to your ship, just like a normal mermaid. And once you're back at your ship, you'll see a unique looking mermaid by your ship. When approaching this merfolk, you'll have the option to retrieve all of the treasure you stored in the statue, having all of the loot pop up to the surface of the water. Fun fact, the only players who can retrieve this treasure are those who put the treasure in the statue in the first place. Do with that info however you wish. And now for the final passive encounter, the skeleton camps. Now I already discussed these in the sea-based world events, since they were necessary to progress the Burning Blade event, but these skeleton camps can also be completed as crews not manning the Burning Blade. But if you ever enter these temples while not crewing the blade, you will enter as enemies to Flameheart. Once you enter the temple, you'll have to complete the constellation puzzle, as normal, lighting the brazier in the center and using the beacon to light up the 3 constellations. And once you complete the star puzzle, you will notify Flameheart's obsidian Obsidian Guardians. 5 waves of obsidian skeletons, which act exactly as normal and ashen skeletons do, will attempt to defend the temple. But once you've beaten them, the ritual door will open. Instead of using the ritual to add value and knowledge to the blade, you can steal the Orb of Secrets directly, putting an end to Flameheart's ritual. Now this is the only piece of treasure you can receive from this encounter. However, it is one of the most valuable items in the game, going for the base price of 20,000 gold, which becomes 50,000 gold when a full grade emissary. We will discuss emissaries in a future episode. If you're looking for some extra coin, you can always look for the additional constellations lit up on panels around the room. If you find those constellations on the star map, then you can light them up to temporarily open the doors under those panels to get some extra coin from gold piles. But that is everything I have for this video. There are a lot of encounters in the Sea of Thieves, ranging from the Megalodon to the Sunken Treasury, but hopefully I have taught you something new. And for those who haven't explored any of these passive encounters, I would really recommend it, as they really put a lot of effort into making these structures look as beautiful as they can be, and they can be quite fun as well. If I missed anything regarding world encounters, please let me know down in the comments. Please make sure to leave a like and subscribe. The next episode will be on emissaries, so if you have any questions at all, please let me know. And I'll see you all next time.